Hello, boys and girls. Today, we're going to talk about something that I feel everyone really needs to understand right now. We're talking about. Wow, the curves are killer. We're talking about federalism. I'm sorry, I'm not Pirate Software. I haven't done this that much. So, today we're talking about federalism. It is a form of government. The best example is the United States right now, and it is a case where people elect both a federal and a local government, and the two work together to basically create a singular. Well, they're separate, but they work together. They're intertwined. So the way that this works, our Constitution gave us our Bill of Rights, where we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, da 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 da. When you get to the 10th, this is the one that matters. 10th Amendment says any privileges or responsibilities not explicitly given to the federal government will instead be reserved for state governments. This is what was used to reverse Roe v. Wade, because the government at a federal level has never, ever had abortion rights codified as a federal level by the Constitution. If a law is written that is outside of what is allowed in the constitutional rights, it can be actually overturned as unconstitutional, as it is supposed to be for the state level. And that's the key, is that they can, or they must, have those laws fit what is actually granted to federal government. Federal government is given things like immigration enforcement, currency production, military, things like that. Things that are a massive scale and or affect all of us. Immigration being the key example of that, because if Texas wants to have a secure border, but New Mexico wants as many people to cross the border as possible, it could very easily have it where New Mexico lets them in, and then they just go to Texas and ruin Texas. That kind of thing. And, that's just a perfect example for why immigration is federal. It just happens to fit the fact that there's a bunch of rioting and ICE enforcement going on. But here's the key. We have the people. The people, they go to the ballot box. And they, good lord, going straight across with a mouse is impossible. I need a pen and a mouse pad thingy. Anyways, they take their votes and they put it in the ballot box. At the end of that, it gets counted. Now, here's a key point. Back in the day, all their votes would go to the state. They would elect their state congressmen, their state senators, and their state governor. And then at that point, the senators and congressmen, or senators or congressmen, I cannot remember exactly which it was, would then put their votes in a ballot box. Looks like garbage, but I'm trying to give you guys something to look at while I explain this. So they would then put their votes in a ballot box, and then that would then elect the federal. Good lord. My mouse must have acceleration on, because I did not move that far for that. So then they would put their votes in, and that would elect federal congressmen and federal senators. So you, as a person, a citizen of this country, would vote for your state stuff, and then they would vote for the federal stuff. But that's not how it works anymore. Due to the 17th Amendment, now we don't do it that way. The ballot box was removed there. Why is this so whatever? The ballot box was removed there. And so now our votes go to the state and the federal. And so now we have us electing directly both of these. But here's the key. The way that laws work is that certain laws are at the federal level, and then below that is the local level. Well, actually, let me undo that. It then goes to the state level, and then it goes to the local level. The supreme law of the land is whatever is justified in the federal law. So if federal law says you cannot be here without coming through our legal immigration process, a state can never legally put a law in place that overrides the federal law. It must go in this hierarchy. So then, at that point, we have the federal law, which must follow the Constitution's. It must follow the Constitution's established sets of things that they can enforce. So if they tried to put a law in place that is not granted to them by the Constitution, at that point, the courts will say, no, you don't get to do that. Give me just a second. Make a little gavel. So the courts will then say, no, you can't do that. Bang, bang, bang. And so they'll strike it down, say, no, that's not constitutional. The 10th Amendment says that is not a privilege granted to the federal authorities. It is a state and a local circumstance. This is also able to be used for a case like, I'm not aware of any circumstances where the federal authorities were granted the ability to make marijuana illegal. I don't think that was in the Constitution anywhere. As such, it should be a state level issue. I don't approve of drugs myself. I think that it jacks you up and can cause horrible side effects. I've lost family members to drug overdoses. I've seen how bad it is. But it is still considered a state level issue. Now, there are certain circumstances where local jurisdictions get absolute authority. This changes based on the state's constitutions and things like that. Some states will have stricter constitutions that grant more power to the state, and then other ones will have more local power. It all depends on your state. So, the key is, feds have priority on anything that is granted to them via the Constitution. That is why what we're seeing in terms of enforcement of federal law is, it doesn't matter that San Diego and San Francisco and LA are calling themselves sanctuary cities. They can't override federal law. And what's also going to be difficult with this is potentially the fact that these states are passing laws that say you cannot work with federal authorities on immigration issues. That can very easily be construed and treated as assisting or obscuring or blocking federal authorities from doing their job, and that is a federal offense. It is a federal offense. And you can, the idea was that, let me clear all this really quick. Eraser. Size. Oh no, that's not big enough. I need to get a better option for this. So the idea was this. Good Lord, that's awful. The idea is this. I'm just going to write over here, I guess. Over here is our new template. The idea was that all the states, state, good Lord, that S is killing me. But all these states would be operating separately good lord, that's awful. They would all be operating separately with a federal umbrella. So, okay, we're all using the same currency. We're all following the same immigration laws. We're all following the same this and the same that and everything like that. So, we've got this, and the agreement is that states will give some tax dollars to feds, and feds will Man, I haven't drawn like this since second grade. Feds will protect. That's a gun. Feds will protect the states. That's why they had a navy and an army and eventually an air force, was purely for the fact that they would help protect. Now, the way that it ends up working in modern America is that a bunch of tax dollars all go to the feds, and then the feds say, we want programs like this in the states. And then they just kind of push money back down into whatever states they need to push money down into. And at this point, we're getting into a bit of a fight because the conservative side is wanting to say, hey, the 1964 Civil Rights Act says you cannot discriminate on anyone based on their race, gender, immutable characteristics such as those. But we have all the DEI stuff in universities, the best examples being the fact that in order to get into a place like Harvard, because they were in the news recently, as an Asian, you must score much higher than a black individual or a Hispanic individual, and you still have to score higher than a white individual. So, it's literally treating people differently based on their race. And that is why DEI was being targeted by a federal level. But now the states are filing lawsuits saying, hey, you can't take the money away, and colleges are doing the same. And it's like, well, you are breaking the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and as such, feds have the authority to control where money goes. Specifically, the executive branch has the ability to control it, because the executive branch over time has gotten things like the Department of Education added under its wheelhouse, even though it never should have had that at all existing. It should have been up to communities to do their own education with money potentially coming from the federal government for those that needed help or stood out as exemplary. So basically, unless the Congress specifically says X dollars must go to this, the federal government has the authority to treat that money in whatever way it wants. It could say, hey, you're not following the 1964 Civil Rights Act. We're not giving you money until you start following it again. And as such, we've got federalism. A mishmash of states that have different values, different laws, and different standards, but must follow the federal level of authority, which is why there's currently challenges to gun laws in certain states such as California and Illinois, because the federal authority is granted the authority over guns, and they have no laws to prevent you from doing that, and it, in fact, explicitly protects that ability to own a firearm. So having states that say, no, you have to jump through our hoops is actually breaking Constitution because of the fact that the Constitution says you can't abridge that right. And so if it's granted to the federal government via the Constitution, the states have no say and cannot overwrite and cannot undermine. Doing so is considered an act of rebellion and or sedition. At the same time, the federal government cannot take powers that are not granted to it explicitly via the Constitution, as they were saved for the states, themselves. So it's not that the federal government is supposed to be some big, powerful meanie. It's meant to be a divided power structure on purpose. On purpose. And it was also meant to originally have it where you were supposed to be involved in your local elections via this old system where you would vote for your state representatives. They would vote for the federal representatives. So that is federalism. I hope you enjoy my garbage art, but I hope to get better at it as time goes on. I would love to get one of those writing pads so that I can just easily write it in the future, but I don't have that. So you got my janky first grader writing. Although I did find that making it larger made it easier to write things. So next time I'll do better. But until then, I hope you guys understand federalism just a little bit more now, and I'll see you guys in the next one.